Hello, me again. Hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about boxes. Basically, humans need to constantly put everything under a label inside a category, squared into infinity. I am actually attempting to become a complete square myself. I even have this boxed up life that I'm trying to achieve, squaring in every inch of my day. And I do that because I've lived most of my life in chaos, and so I'm trying to bring upon some order in my life. That's basically what I want to talk about today. Our need for structures, but also fluidity. But I feel our society is mostly built on structuring things in. And I want to find ways so that we can embrace change more easily, so that we don't find ourselves accidentally locked inside a box that we can't get out of. I'm hoping that once I start vomiting out words, it's all gonna make sense, but let's see. You might get lost here, and if so, I apologize. And I'm just using boxes to paint myself a picture so that I can go through my thoughts more easily. It's not to sound preachy or to, sell you the house that you should fix your foundation or anything like that. It's just my way of thinking and going about things. So I'll just start with something I think most people can relate to, and that is if you've ever been in a relationship and then once that relationship ended, you went upon a big change, or at least for you, big. Maybe you colored your hair pink, or started wearing lipstick, or became a poetry reader at the comedy club. Who knows? Whatever it might be, you might want to ask yourself why it is you had to wait for the relationship to end before you could embrace this change. So one reason is a natural one, and that is that as humans, we basically like to box in our timelines. They become chapters. So when you end the relationship, you're all of a sudden presented with a new chapter, a clean slate. That's great. You can write your own story. But there's something behind that as well, and that is that you've perhaps been anchored to this old version of yourself that's no longer really you. For example, if you're in a relationship with someone and your hair is blonde, and then a year later, you're not vibing with your hair anymore. Maybe you want to color it pink or something, and you feel scared to do that. Scared that the person you're with won't love you or maybe judge you when you become a pink haired person. And the same sort of goes for our character. Who we are when we meet someone, when we're in a relationship with someone, might not be the person we are a year later, yet we're tied to this version of ourselves, and the person we're with might also be tied, so we're in this like nestled knot together, unable to change. Then you should ask yourself if you left the person because the person would in fact judge you for becoming a pink-haired person, or if it was just because you didn't feel true to yourself. And obviously when we're in a relationship with someone, we need to be able to feel like we can be ourselves, but that responsibility lies on you. It's a scary thing being true to ourselves. We don't know where it's going to lead us. If you set out on a journey to be true to yourself, you don't know where you'll be in a year. So how can you avoid finding yourself in a situation where you're basically anchored to these old past versions of yourself? Well, one way is to practice radical honesty, which is something I try to do myself. But with that, I don't mean just telling the truth to everyone you meet, but I do recommend that as well. But I more so mean telling the truth to yourself, to not kid yourself, basically, and to not buy your own bullshit, because let's face it, we can be quite good at bullshitting ourselves. And this is actually a great example, because I'm scared shitless of talking to the camera. I'm really scared of getting judged, and I'm scared of saying the wrong things, but that fear, I have to push through it even harder to be on the path that I'm meant for, to feed my innermost wishes. I can't let fear stop me from that. That would be dishonest to myself. And in my head there's all these thoughts of why this would be a bad idea, but I just have to say no, fuck that. That's bullshit. I'm not taking my own bullshit. I know my heart's wishes. As humans, we change, and we have to allow ourselves to change. We can't get stuck in these ideas of ourselves. For example, 2 years ago, I would make fun of people who read poetry on stage. But now I'm like, oh wow, that's so brave, something I would love to do one day. Why not? I think allowing yourself to change is the biggest gift you can give a relationship, whether it be with your parents or a romantic partner, because it's like a domino effect. Once you change, once you loosen your anchor to this knot that you find yourself in with your family and your partner and your friends, the knot is just dropping to the floor and just freeing everyone. I've seen it happen. It's really cool. It's contagious. It's like when you start moving with the flow, people around you start moving with the flow. You pull them forward. But how does it all tie back to boxes and labels? Well, I touched a bit on it in my last video where I talked about intrusive thoughts, and I said that you can basically choose which thoughts you want to have a connection to. And in the same way, I mean that you can basically choose which labels and boxes to have a connection to. And you might want to do inventory of your boxes to see which ones are serving you, to ask yourself, who am I? And am I this way because I once thought of myself as this way, or because someone else thought of me as this way? Or am I this way because it's me? So I have a great example of this. I have this friend who moved countries about a year ago. And so here she was trying to establish a new social life for herself. She was making new friends. And in the end, though, she felt really taken advantage of. And so she asked me, am I a pushover? Please tell me honestly. And I answered her that, yes, you have been a pushover. You let people take advantage of you. You haven't been clear with boundaries at all. And it came as a shock to her because it's not the view she had of herself. The view she had of herself was that of her parents, who saw her as someone not to mess with, someone very short-tempered, someone borderline bitchy. And she probably got those labels by the parents from having gone through puberty, because who is not moody, you know? That stuck with her. She was really struggling. She was basically having an identity crisis, asking me, like, well, who am I? Am I this borderline bitch that my parents think I am, or am I this spineless pushover that lets people take advantage of me? I told her, you're none of them. You became the spineless pushover because you never had to learn to put boundaries, because you were seen as someone not to mess with. It's an excellent lesson for her because now she has the chance to take the both of both worlds, to see that she's a compassionate person who is still strong-willed and move forward with that. And I feel like we always need these traumatic events for us to be able to go about change. And I'm totally a shortcut person myself, so I don't want to wait a full year until it's New Year and I can make my new resolution. I want to make it today. If I want to do something new, then today is the day. I can't wait around for it. And structures and labels, they aren't all bad. They make us feel like we know ourselves and like we know the people around us, give us connection and community, like someone who comes out as gay. They automatically tell the parents, like, hey, I'm different from you. Can you still love me even though I'm different? And at the same time, it opens up this brand new world with like-minded people. But I also find it very interesting. I feel like 10 years ago, people came out more as homosexuals, whereas now it's like you come out as queer, which is more of an open box. I can take myself as an example. I have no limits when it comes to who I can fall in love with or who I can find sexually attractive. Yet I don't have a strong connection to the label bisexual or pansexual or queer. Like for me, it's more just a given. But for another person who it hasn't been a given for, this label can be so empowering and open up a brand new world. But it's about being able to have these labels and then not feel like we're lying if we're changing. I have a friend who built her entire identity on the fact that she was a lesbian, who was so out and loud and basically admired as this queen in this lesbian community, until one day she found out that she could fall in love with a guy. And her entire identity just shattered, and it was really traumatic for her because she lost a lot of friends and faced a lot of judgment. And I mean, we've seen the opposite happen a trillion times, so it's no surprise. But as people, we need to be acceptant of change within ourselves and each other. So the same way you go about embracing change yourself, you should always try to see to others and wonder, am I allowing this person to be themselves with me? Am I allowing them to be their honest, truthful selves with me? You know, the way people think about you, it affects you. It makes you think about yourself in a way. Take, for example, a school child who is the teacher's favorite. He's going to have a better success rate than the kid who got diagnosed with ADHD and is told they're never going to be able to focus their entire life. How can we use these labels and boxes as ways to push ourselves, like to push the boundaries? If you're doomed to live in the same box for the rest of your life, say for example if you have a mental disorder, then make sure you push the walls of this box as far as you fucking can to try to break out of all borders that limit you. For example, I have social anxiety, and 10 years ago this social anxiety was crippling, to the point where I would just cry and cry and cry if I had to meet someone. And today, it's not disabling anymore. I can meet people, I still have the anxiety, but I can meet and interact with people. And it sort of brings me to another way in which you can practice radical honesty, which is to be completely vulnerable. For example, I went to a party 3 days ago, and as someone with social anxiety, that was really, really hard for me. But I took it as an opportunity to be vulnerable. And so the people that came to talk to me, I told them basically as a disclaimer, like, hey, I'm a bit shy, I have a bit of social anxiety, and I'm a bit weird. So what I'm saying is basically like, hey, I'm this box, but I'm ready to break out of it, help me. And I know mental health can be a fucking bitch, and it can feel really hopeless at times. But if you're someone who's struggling with a mental disorder, then you have to know that you are the scientist. Don't wait around for like psychology to immensely advance within the next 10 years. You are the perfect researcher for your condition. So you make sure that you try different ways, that you push the walls of your box so that in 10 years you can be the one telling people how to live their lives to better their conditions. Nothing is set in stone. I like to think about mental disorders quite differently, and I say this as someone who's immensely struggling herself and as someone who has a schizophrenic sister. I feel like everything is on a spectrum. We're all these different types of people. You know, we have the young archetypes and we have disorders. And I feel like there's all these like ideas and concepts out there, and we're all just realizing different sides of the same light bulb. A mental disorder could be the same ideas Jung had about the archetypes, yet it's like an archetype gone wrong or being put in a system that didn't work. To me, there's no surprise why we have mental disorders. Even though I don't really see them in the conventional way, it's no surprise to me that people are fucking suffering when we're put in a system that is so soulless and we're just meant to function. And I don't feel like we're sick because we can't. I feel like the system is fucking sick. Don't even get me started on the system, because that is one solid box with chains all around it and the key has been thrown out. Change does not happen in a system that's doing its best to stay static. Which makes it even more important that we go about change. We might be stuck in a static system, but that doesn't mean that we can't flow forward. And like I said, when we do that, it's like a domino effect, and the things we're connected to, they follow. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, don't be the person who's like in an argument with a friend and says, you did this a year ago, or you said this a year ago, no, you used to think this. Don't be the person who holds up an old picture of a friend and says, no, this is who you are, this is who you are. Light that fucking picture on fire and say, you can be anyone you want to be. I feel also that the more and more I take psychedelics, the less and less I'm attached to the labels I once had a connection to. Which can also feel a bit impersonal at times, because it's nice to have the structure, it's nice to know who we are, and it's nice to be able to identify to the people around us. But it can also feel really empowering to be fluid and feel like I can be a brand new person tomorrow. My point there is that we need both. We need both structure and fluidity, just as Taoism says we need both order and chaos, to walk the way in between, to find the middle ground, and to be our best selves. It's all a balance, and it's all a process, and the best thing you can just do for yourself is bring awareness to it. And then the rest will just follow. Okay, I think that's it for me now. I'll end with doing a poetry reading for you, since I'm a poetry person now. It's the poem of my cheesy outro, so the full one goes: be kind, be true, but only be true if you can be kind. Only be kind if you can be true. Keep it simple, be you. Okay, bye! Taoism, woo!